Hi everyone. I'm Raluca Petrescu. I'm a digital marketer here at Anubex. Thank you so much for joining us today. I know it must be hard to show up to all the online events that are happening right now. So many thanks for being here. I'm going to introduce our speakers shortly, but before that, maybe just give an overview of the webinar. So today we will be covering the main factors and options to be considered when planning a modernization project. And here at Anubex, we work with organizations from various industries, but we wanted to have a look at the challenges or particular solutions that universities might have when modernizing their IT systems. And that being said, I'd like to welcome our panelists. So we've got Mark Schultz from the Texas A&M University System, who's going to take us through the story of the project they are currently working on. Louis Heymans from Anubex, highlighting some pros and cons and potential obstacles for 3 main modernization approaches. And Scott Spiro from Microsoft, presenting the main cloud migrations drivers and outcomes. And if you have any questions during the talk, please feel free to drop them in the Q&A window, and we'll do our best to address them at the end. If not, there will also be a follow-up email with the takeaways of the webinar. Okay, I'm gonna hand you over to Mark now and ask him maybe to add a few words about himself and his work at the Texas A&M University System before presenting.
Thank you, Raluca. So it's good morning here. So hello to everyone. Glad to be with you this morning. Want to share a little bit of our journey in our IT systems modernization, specifically our financial system modernization. I'm the Deputy Chief Information Officer here at the Texas A&M University System. I reside in College Station, Texas, where our flagship is. And myself and my team have oversight to deliver applications that are shared across the state of Texas that serve our different institutions. So I wanted to start today by telling you a little bit about the Texas A&M University System. Okay, got the technology working and got to the next slide. So the Texas A&M University System serves a broad set of stakeholders across the state of Texas. We have over 50,000 employees, which includes more than 9,000 faculty, over 150,000 students across the state, 11 total universities, 8 state agencies, a health science center, our system offices, and a branch campus. We are actually 22 companies or federal employee ID numbers, and we have offices all across in every county in Texas, which is 254 counties across the state. So this gives you a little bit of a visual view of the system and our members. So you can see we very much cover the state. These are where our universities reside and our agencies. But as I said earlier, in every county, there's someone that's accessing one of our shared systems here that we deliver here in the system offices. So Texas is a big state. I won't, everyone kind of knows that, but we're very proud of what we do and how we're able to share our services here across such a broad state. And most of you have heard probably more of our flagship school, which is here in College Station, where the system office headquarters are. It is now over 71,000 students. That includes the Health Science Center numbers. 3,900 to 4,000 faculty here in College Station, and staff and student employees approaching 18,000. So big employer in the state, obviously the big impact here. And so our story is that we were facing decisions for both of our HR system and our financial system about 5 years ago. They were both legacy systems running on a mainframe computer system. And so part of our story is we went two different directions with each of them. So in particular with our HR payroll, which we call HCM system, we chose to implement Workday. And we had a successful 2-year project to implement Workday, and actually went live in December of 2017. It was on time and in budget. It was a lot of work, quite a large project. Again, we are a happy Workday customer. The project was successful and on time. Yet at the same time, it was a challenging project, and it was disruptive. There's a lot of change. Change is always hard. Not everybody loves change, and there were some areas where we clearly went forward. There were some areas where we didn't go forward as much as we'd hoped. So that's part of the story when you bring in a whole new system like Workday. So on the financial side, we faced a similar decision. Our financial system was in a bit of a different state than our HR payroll system. It was implemented in 1990, and it had been modernized and adapted over the last 30 years. For example, it had a web front end had been built to it that has significant functionality. We held the source code rights to our financial system. And as I mentioned, it was legacy, and it was written in ADABAS and Natural. So we, on the completion of the Workday project, and actually near the end of that, we began to decide, okay, what will we do with our financial system? So the story of our financial system is that it is trusted and reliable. It has been well supported and delivered reliable functionality for these years, and it is also grown and adapted, as I mentioned. It is web enabled, and again, we integrated with the data warehouse. We've been able to extend it in a number of ways with some nice tools. And it's deeply embedded into business processes and other applications. The way we code cost center numbers is scattered all throughout the state, and is very much part of so many things that it's hard to get your arms around the impact of a system that's been in place for a long time, such as that. It's also been integrated with the state of Texas core system. So one of our challenges as a university system and as a public institution is have a lot of requirements that we have to comply with from the state of Texas, and a lot of integrations, retirement systems, the financial system, the way we are granted our appropriations and such. One of the ways the system had been modernized was we use Jagger for system procurement. So we've been able to continue to use our financial system, but have a better procurement and shopping experience, so to speak, for our researchers and departments that need to procure items. We've integrated it with Concur for travel and expense. As I mentioned before, it's been integrated with Workday now for HR and payroll, which was a significant effort. And then it works with the multiple student banner systems around the state. So while this system was successful and providing most of the business needs, there were some risks and challenges with it. So it is written in a legacy language and challenging to support and enhance. The staff that supported it, very loyal, very dedicated. Many had been with the support of that system since the system was implemented in the 90s. But many of them are approaching retirement and would like to have some time for that. We've struggled bringing in new employees to support the system. To find employees with mainframe and related skills is difficult, and also difficult to develop internally, not necessarily viewed as a desirable skill set sometimes. So it's just keeping our staffing levels up has been a challenge um, over the years. The mainframe infrastructure costs are, you know, there's costs for all of IT, but there's just a sense that the mainframe costs are disproportionately high. The amount that we spend for the different licensing and such, compared to what we do for other systems, is significant. And we had some challenges in the reporting area. So the reporting systems were our biggest functional gap, and many of that stemmed from just difficulty to access data on a mainframe legacy system. We had tools, but it is a challenge. So in that, and given different options, we decided to take on a proof of concept and to see about this idea of actually replatforming and keeping the system but moving it to different technology. Our stakeholders wanted us to explore that option, even though we were considering at the same time a off-the-shelf system as well. So we did make the decision to move forward with a replatforming and modernization with some refactoring along the way. In the end, these were the drivers that our stakeholders really embraced and felt that that just provided the drivers to lead us to the decision. Overall, less disruptive, evolutionary approach, lots of fear of the impact of a big change, a big shift to a whole new way of doing financial processing, and a feeling that we would be better served by taking a step-by-step evolutionary approach. Obviously, with going with commercial off-the-shelf software, there are licensing costs, subscription costs. As I mentioned earlier, we did own the source code for our financial system. So the cost of operating it is primarily the cost that we incur and aren't paying large licensing or subscription fees. By modernizing and replatforming, we were able to continue to leverage the investments with our integrations. So the AggieBuy is our term for Jagger, which I mentioned earlier. Concur, Maestro is our research information system. iPayments is another critical system that we integrate with. So all of these integrations we are going to continue to be able to use and leverage, and will continue to work. We will be able to expand our labor market for developers for the application. We do call the application Famous. I'm not sure I introduced that acronym earlier, but that's the name of our financial system. And overall, our infrastructure cost and risk should be reduced. So we not just had challenges with the developers and support staff for Famous, but also those running our mainframe infrastructure. And on the whole, while there was significant optimism of things in the marketplace and good things happening, they weren't compelling enough to push us in that direction. And some of them, the feeling was needed to mature a bit. So the marketplace didn't offer anything that really drove us to a different decision, particularly in light of all of these other factors. So I mentioned earlier that we entered into a proof of concept. So our process for that was to issue an RFP. From that RFP, we were introduced to a Nubix and a Cisco, who have partnered with us through this journey. We selected them through a competitive process. And some of the factors that we really led us to this decision to choose a Nubix and a Cisco as our partners were their years of experience and expertise in this space, that they have gone through multiple projects where they've taken companies through a replatforming and refactoring process. Um, they had mature and repeatable processes that could be applied to our situation. They had excellent tools, methodology, and approaches. So all of these things, again, we didn't see this with everyone who proposed for our project, but we saw this very much with Anubex. We liked the fact that we wanted this to be a step-by-step approach, with the first step being like for like, and the test-driven approach to manage the risk. So it is a risky project. I don't think there's any way to get away from that. But at the same time, these tools, these processes, this expertise really, we felt like, strongly reduced the risk of taking on a project of this nature. And we had good team chemistry and collaboration with our partners early on, and that has continued. A great team to work with, and certainly getting people to work together. This is a technology project, but at the same time, it's very much a people project. So we've been able to have our teams here have embraced the project. A lot of that I give credit to our partners too, and just building up that teamwork approach to moving this project forward. So just a quick look at our what we're doing from a technology perspective. So we are moving from Adabase and Natural, the world of JCL and a legacy scheduler. We're moving forward to the Microsoft stack, SQL Server, C# and T-SQL, and PowerShell and Control-M running on open systems. So these will be the tools that we leverage going forward, and we fully expect those to provide the ability to move the application forward and to continue to modernize it. We are 10 months into the project, more or less. Again, good teamwork and collaboration. Most of the challenges we faced were identified in our proof of concept phase, so really good work in that phase to sort of know what the project were going to look like. So no really major surprises so far. Certainly challenges. Certainly we have to solve problems every day. But going back to that second bullet point, if you have a good team and everybody's working together, you just continue to, we just knock out those challenges and continue to push forward. So overall, our project is moving forward, and we're on track, and we're looking to go live, which is a ways out still. But overall, we are finishing up one phase, and soon we'll be moving into our system integration phase. Overall, things we have coming up in the future is additional testing, as I mentioned there, getting our technical team trained. There's certainly some retraining that's occurring, as well as though bringing in people that have the more modern tool set, teaching them about the application. So we've got both types of those trainings planned for the future, getting ourselves operationally ready, and all marching towards a February 2022 go live. We look ahead to what we call phase 3, which is after go live, a period of being able to enhance and modernize the project once we're on the new technology. So that is my presentation for today. I think all I have left is questions. I can certainly take those now, or we can wait until later in the webinar for that. But thanks for listening to my story and our journey here. And anyway, we've been happy to be with you today.
Thank you, Mark. I think many technology experts can relate to this process. Even they not necessarily work for a higher education institution. So I think it was very insightful. I think maybe we can continue with our next presentation and see potential questions at the end. So, Louis, please.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
See the presentation screen? Okay, thanks, Mark. In the next session, I would like to, well, maybe myself, I'm the CEO of Anubex. I think a few of these things have been addressed before by Mark, and I suppose that there are a few other people in the webinar that will recognize this. So the mainframe system is an expensive system. There's many times there are skills problems. And yeah, the digital transformation plan is sometimes hampered by the current system. So let me maybe present some options on how to overcome these problems. So first of all, let's look at the rewrite. So when you rewrite a system like Mark was presenting, we're talking here about system with millions of lines of code. Now, the positive side of rewrite is it's greenfield, so you start from a blank sheet, and there's a lot of things are possible. Also, there are many developers today that can work with the latest development languages. There's modern tools available, like development tools like Microsoft Visual Studio Code, for instance. There's many open source tools available, so a lot of options there. Plus, of course, it opens the way to DevOps, CI/CD, microservices, and so on. And last but not least, you can add extra functionality to the old system. Now, at the other side, there can be some problems as well. As Mark already mentioned before, over the last decades, your developers might have developed business rules that are really hidden somewhere in the project, in the system, and that are not necessarily documented. Still, you're using these business functions every day. So it is not always certain that when you redevelop the system, you might lose some of these business functions because, yeah, you just overlook them. Okay. A rewrite is high business involvement. Your users are the end users of the system. They will be heavily involved. And of course, they will be involved because they might also be the sponsors, the money sponsors of the project. Complicated testing procedures. It's complicated simply because you don't really have a frame of reference to determine whether the new system, the new developments are correct and do what you want them to do. It's complicated, and we know that testing in every project is one of the most complicated parts. Simply because, yeah, how do you develop scenarios, how you keep them up to date, and so on. And of course, well, I think it was Gartner who said that a developer can produce in one day 160 lines of code. When we say produce, it means from inception of the specifications over development, testing, implementation, and deployment. Now, suppose you have a system with 5 million lines of code. How long will it take a team of 20 people to provide the new system? Well, if you make the calculation, I think it's around 10 years. So consequently, duration and cost is a big obstacle here. Okay, so obstacles are the size of the application. And of course, you are building building this new application, and you will, from time to time, bring into production new functions. So you have your old system, you have your new functions, and you start building bridges between old and new, and you have to be very careful because it can be that over time, the only time that you're really spending in the project is maintaining and building bridges. So we have a case in 2010, a large company was asking Anubex to migrate their mainframe system. We started the migration somewhere in mid-2010. We delivered the project early 2012. Now, at the party of the celebration of the successful finishing of the project, we learned that this same company spent close to $100 million previously in an attempt to rewrite that same system. Now, I can tell you we migrated the mainframe applications for a fraction of that cost. So there are not that many success stories when you have to rewrite very large systems. Of course, still rewrite is valid for small self-contained applications. Let's move to the next slide. Commercial off the shelf, you see the slide? I think there is a delay in showing the slides. You see it now?
Yes, now we see the pros.
Okay, so commercial off the shelf. Well, the nice thing about commercial off the shelf is that a lot of people before you spent already a lot of effort in building functionality from which you can benefit. And of course, with regard to corrective and evolutive maintenance, that is taken care of the supplier. And of course, your supplier, they will provide releases at regular times. Now, the cons, I don't know whether you see the cons. Yeah, there is a problem with the switch between the slides, sorry. The cons, well, usually these standard solutions, what they miss is just what are the differentiators for you. Let's say your competitive edge. So these hidden business rules that are in your current system are not always available in the standard solution, which means that you have to implement the standard solution, and on top of that, you have to develop extra functions in order to make sure that the solution will be complete. Now, the question is who is going to develop and maintain these missing parts? And moreover, once you have these bespoke developments done, who is going to keep them in sync when new releases of the standard solution are provided? So let's move to the next slide. The obstacles, there is an important organizational impact, and I suppose that that Mark mentioned this already. When you introduce a commercial off-the-shelf package, like in this case Workday, it has an important organizational impact because, processes that users used before might be completely dropped, and new processes will be in use to use the standard solution. Also, during the implementation, your users will be with one leg in the old system, with the other leg in the new system, and that can become very disruptive. And as before, with the previous option, testing is complicated, and because there is no real frame for a reference to say my new system is really complete and correct and does what it needs to do. We have a nice case about somebody who wanted to implement a commercial off-the-shelf a long time ago. We met a company, I knew a company with the name Aljuvan, and Aljuvan, they are specialists in building custom trailers for the transport of goods like meat, fruit, and so on. In other words, goods that need to stay fresh during transport. And the way why they are expert in this is because of their very unique way of their production process. Now, transportation firms, they have that transport this type of goods, they have very specific requirements in terms of how these trailers and trucks should be built. Not a truck, but a trailer. Okay. The special thing about this production process is that each individual case is built specifically, and the factory engineers of Aljuvan, they really program the whole production process again for each individual case. That makes them so unique. Okay? And when I say program, they really do this like in COBOL. And that is a real central part of their legacy system. Now, at a certain moment, the technology on which they were running this system was became obsolete, and they needed to look for a replacement for their core system. They were recommended a standard solution by an integrator, and that was the way they wanted to go. But when I learned that this was their potential solution, I asked for a meeting with the management of that company, because I knew that if they would implement that package, it would create some problems, because some of the really important parts would not be in that package. So when I had a meeting with the management, I quickly came to the conclusion that they were charmed by the bells and whistles of this new solution, but that the real problem was not solved by that solution. So simply because, yeah, the way they handled their production process could not be replicated in that package. So in fact, they would go for a solution that would just not take care of their competitive edge, I would say. So after 2 hours of discussion, I could convince the management to do a refactoring rather than to implement a package. And 1 year later, their problem was solved in a few words. Okay. So the conclusion is, commercial off-the-shelf solutions or systems are perfect for peripheral business applications like general ledger and certain parts of HR. But we see a mixed number of success stories. Now refactoring, that is the way we do the things. Refactoring, it's a technical project, and the technical project, you can do it with a very small team of experts. So, because you don't change functional parts of the project, it's really a technical project. Which also means that you can use tools to automate the process. Because tools, they can transform a huge amount of code in a very short time frame. Testing is much easier than in the previous options, because you can use testing tools that automate for a large part the testing. So whereby you solve a lot of problems by you can do it with small teams, in fact. Okay. And in the refactoring, there is no user retraining, simply because, the old system will become the new system, but now in another technological outfit. And of course, since the duration is short, also the cost will be in a completely different dimension than with the previous options. And the cost is controllable. Even you could say that you could calculate the return on investment before you start with the project. Of course, there are some downsides as well. There's no functional changes, so the business might not always be happy because, you do a project, but there is no functional benefits for them. And still certain parts require a manual intervention. Like if you go from one scheduler to a different scheduler, you can automate certain parts, but a large part will still be manual. And of course, the change management for the technical team, because it is we're now in a new technological environment. So by definition, this change management for your technical team, but that is also true for the two previous options. Okay. Now, of course, there are also obstacles, and the obstacles could be that, exceptionally, source code is not available or not owned by the customer. So, if the source code is not available, then it's very clear that refactoring becomes difficult. And of course, always there is a struggle with the business, because the business in many cases is the sponsor of such a project, but for them there are no real functional changes. So that might be a problem. Now, we have a case with another company, a German company called ISTA. And ISTA, they are leaders in, how do you say this? Consumption-dependent billing in buildings with collective energy systems. So what they do is they make the consumption of water and energy individually transparent. Okay. So they had a few attempts to migrate their mainframe systems over the years, but ultimately they came to Anibex and they awarded us a migration project to move from their mainframe system to a modern technology. The nice thing, through the migration project, they were now able to deploy their applications in Docker containers with immediate benefits like fully automated CI/CD pipelines, horizontal scalability, and they are, in fact, they have the basis now to go to the private cloud, to the public cloud whenever they decide to. Conclusion, refactoring is fast and cheap. There's a lot of success stories there. And it's the best first step on your digitalization roadmap. So now it's clear Anibex is active in the migration and modernization space, mainframe migration and modernization. And our core competence is automating the processes. So we have built over the time a lot of tools, both code transformation, data conversion, also very important testing tools to largely automate these processes. So we have done projects for very large enterprises and government institutions. So with this, and I'm very sorry for the troublesome switch between slides, but with this I would like to conclude. And I would ask you to get in touch with Anibex if you have questions about refactoring. And so I would like to give the word to Scott now. Thank you.
Thank you, Louis. Let me share my screen. All right. So thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you very much for inviting us to present today. So Microsoft has been doing this for quite some time. Just a brief background, I've been with Microsoft for 8+ years. Part of their mainframe transformation space, and have worked in various organizations within the company. About 13 years before that, involved with the partner community, moving mainframe workloads first on-prem and now to Azure. And then a long time ago was a mainframe COBOL Kix DB2 developer in DBA. But I'm just part of a team here at Microsoft. So we've been doing this for upwards of probably 15 years, 12 to 15 years. And we have groups across the organization to help support this. Microsoft has invested, we have an IBM mainframe, a Z13, actually maybe a Z14 now, but we use it for integration testing. Not so much for managing our own applications, but with that, it allows us to really address the market in ways that others can't. From what we've seen and from what our conversations have been with our customers, digital transformation is their #1 priority. And this started really coming on the radar about 2-3 years ago. And this is due to a number of reasons, from their meeting their customers where they live, to the technological underpinnings and the changes that have been taking place there. The move to mobile and being able to support that space. But it's really about reducing their expenses, reducing their overhead, reducing their risks, both internally from a technical perspective, a personnel perspective, but also being able to quickly adjust and move to a different market to support those markets. You know, with that, on the mainframe space, really, what are the requirements to develop an application from scratch? And both Mark and Lewis have gone through this and explained and expressed, you know, what they see, and that's very true. And this is true for us as well. And this is across verticals, from education to manufacturing to financial sector. But what it comes down to is really 4 different drivers that we see moving our customers in this direction. And I would say that the first and second, and they're very close, would be the cost and the skills issues. From a cost perspective, you're spending upwards of between $1,000 and $3,000 per MIP to support your application environment on the mainframe. Well, by moving that to an on-prem environment or moving that to the cloud, you can reduce that cost by 60, 70, 80%. Again, your mileage may vary, and it depends on the scope and the complexity of your environment, the integration with other applications. But it really is a way to drive down the cost and move more from a CapEx to an OpEx model. On the skills side, it's becoming more and more difficult to find COBOL developers. And in the relative scheme of things, COBOL is easier than trying to find an assembler or PL1 developer these days. So we're really seeing a move for customers to a new skill set. That doesn't mean that they don't keep that skill set. That doesn't mean that they haven't chosen to do this in a phased approach, and I'll get to that in a little bit. From other drivers that we see, the agility, again, time to market with new functionality. For example, in the insurance space, if they want to roll out a new product, they want to be able to get that out to their customers very quickly. By doing that, what they need to do is start incorporating DevOps into their life cycle. From a flexibility and choice, traditionally customers have relied upon a data center, but now they're moving to private clouds. They're moving to a hybrid model where they're marrying a public cloud like Azure with their private cloud and on-prem. And that's one of the differentiating factors that Microsoft supports, is the ability to have that hybrid model. Why migrate? As I mentioned, the cost on average can be lower. You reduce the risk. You're avoiding the cost of your contract renewals. What we see in a lot of cases are companies that are looking to move off the mainframe want to do so. They want to start the conversations about 18 months to 24 months before contract renewal date, because that gives them enough time to analyze the options, analyze their portfolio of applications, and determine which makes sense to migrate, which makes sense to rewrite, and which makes sense to move to more of a COTS package. From your portfolio management, you really have to look across the board and see what is it that's providing me a more competitive advantage over my competitors. And also, what's the financial risk reward? What's the total cost of ownership and the ROI on this? From a first step, obviously the first thing you want to do is look at your application portfolio and identify the business value, and also you may have homegrown apps that you've developed over time, and that combined with COTS packages that you have in-house. So you really have to look to see what makes sense, what functionality is going to be end of life and replaced by a COTS package, which application functionality is not met by the COTS package, and you have to, it is existing today in a homegrown application. Do you want to keep that? Do you want to transform that and move it to either Java or C#? So there's really a series of different methodologies that have already been mentioned. And to that end, what it does is, using those methodologies, It allows us to take what traditionally has been siloed information on the mainframe. Yes, there are ingress and egress paths for that data to integrate with other applications, but by moving it to a more of an open platform, it now allows you to really take advantage of that data and take advantage of that within other applications, perhaps incorporating that into a BI platform allows you to take that and move that into more of an analytics space to really see the value and extract more value out of that information. And really that's what we do, is work with our partners and work with our customers to help identify the applications, the data, first migrate that and transform that information, those applications off the mainframe onto more of an open platform. And then from there, how to then extend that information with Microsoft services, both on-prem as well as Azure. Now, as has been mentioned, there are multiple paths. We look at this really as the 5 R's plus 1. So there's remote hosting where perhaps you've already done this and you have companies like IBM already managing your mainframe environment, or companies like DXC managing your environment. That's one small step to move those workloads out of your own environment so that you're not basically, you want to be in the business of running your business, not of managing the hardware. But beyond that, then you're doing your portfolio analysis and looking to see what makes sense to retire, what has to stay. Perhaps you want to keep it, but you're not looking to transform that. That's fine. You want to take that data, you want to extract that, move that into more of an open database, perhaps on-prem or in the cloud, and then wrap BI around that or analytics around it. Replace, that's where you can replace it with a COTS package. What we find most, though, are customers choosing to both rehost and re-envision. And this is where we look to rehosting. That's where you're taking your code, keeping it as COBOL, and moving it more into, and I'll just say it in a general sense, an emulation environment. But we see a lot of customers, more and more these days, taking their applications, and again, because of the skills issues, they're refactoring that and moving that into a C# or Java environment. Because they want to be able to, one, address the risk with the skills issues, but also begin to take advantage of newer technologies. They want to take their old legacy code and move that more into a microservices environment. They want to take advantage of Docker and Kubernetes and AKS, Azure Kubernetes services. So, in a lot of cases, again, it's the rehost and the re-envision. We see that quite often it's split fairly evenly. As I mentioned, it's really around taking advantage of the data and making it available for other applications, for other business units within your organization, other departments, other agencies, and really giving you the flexibility and the options. We've been doing this for some time, and so we actually have, with our partners, have come up with a reference architecture. And as you can see here, this is really the before and after picture. So we at Microsoft, and again, it's not just me, it's our entire team, we'll take a look at the OS. We'll take a look at the applications themselves. What is it written in? What are the back-end databases? What are the third-party utilities that are currently being used on the mainframe? And we map that to Azure and work with partners like Enubex on transforming the applications to on-prem as well as to Azure. In doing so, we want to make sure that the migration path incorporates all of the environments, both your dev, one or more test environments, and production. And then also take into account your disaster recovery and high availability requirements. And so we map that. And what I'm showing you here is a model that was developed for Azure, but this could equally take place on-prem for those who are moving in the direction of cloud. And we're seeing a lot of companies in that path as being cloud first, is move this architecture in there. And again, it's taking It's taking what you have today and mapping that to an on-prem and cloud environment. Now, in doing this, as I mentioned, this is a very cost-effective way to reduce your expenses. And as you see here, this is just a sample environment. I would say this is a small to medium-sized environment. We come across environments everywhere from 50 to 100 MIPS at the low end to 300,000, 400,000 MIPS. So with our partners, we can address this, and we've been doing this. We've been involved with probably over 1,000 migrations as part of this journey. One of the things, and again, driving this is making sure that what you're achieving today on the mainframe is equal or better in Azure. Because again, we're seeing a lot of companies moving towards that. So this is just a mapping of the capabilities. What you see highlighted or bold-faced is really a differentiator between us and cloud competitors. And we have a number of white papers and blogs on our website that can go into detail on some of these topics. From a sample journey, it's really around identifying what you have today, identifying where you want to be in 1, 3, and 5 years, coming up with the architecture to support that, and then making that transition and moving it until it's first in a pilot and then into a production environment. And then how to take advantage of that target environment for the additional capabilities that it provides. So with that, I turn this back over to you. And if there are any questions, please let me know. I'm available. You'll have my links as part of this. So thank you.
Thank you, Scott, for the presentation. I think we still have maybe 3 or 4 minutes for questions. I see that there are some questions and comments already in the Q&A, and Mark already answered to some of them. Maybe we can summarize. I think it was a comment
Sure,
on COTS.
Yeah, so I think, you know, the COTS and software as a service model is fantastic if it works. We definitely, it's part of our strategy to use software as a service, to use COTS where it can. I think for us, it was the significant investment in our legacy platform, the fact that we own it. Sometimes just the journey to get to COTS, even though it may have solved all of our problems, the journey to implement a new financial system for us was huge and very expensive. So that, even if all the functionality had been there, that was a major factor in our decision as well. And again, being a university system, high compliance, integration with research administration, all of the integrations that are required on the financial system. You wouldn't necessarily think of a financial system as you know, strategic differential. I wouldn't necessarily put our financial system in that category, but it was the kind of thing that it had a lot of special requirements. And that really led us to our decision.
I think we're hitting the time limit, so just thank you everyone for attending, and yeah, please reach out on LinkedIn or email or phone if you have any other questions or you need support. And many thanks to our panelists again. We are very grateful for having you sharing your insights and expertise, and hope we'll catch up with all of you soon. So look out for our next webinars and stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Have a good
Bye.
day, everyone.